Thanks for this opportunity. I just wanted to say a couple of words about my brief time working with Fred over the last 6 months or so. He really was an inspiration. We had some laughs too. I recall particularly our visit with people from DFAT to Bima, Dompu and Sumbawa, when we got to try out the horse milk. It's supposed to be wild horse milk, which caused a bit of hilarity, particularly for Fred and I, because we found out afterwards that the wild horse milk was particularly designed for virility in men of a certain age. But on a more serious note, yeah, Fred really was an inspiration. His passing is a terrible blow. I was really looking forward to working with him and learning so much from him. Rest in peace.
I guess the biggest one
Thanks for this opportunity. I just wanted to say a couple of words.
Any type of intervention, but particularly in learning, if you don't measure it. I think we have so many examples. We've heard here in the last couple of days the things we've talked about, and this isn't an issue you could say about Australia or this region. It's all over. We've been investing for years and years, if not decades, in training teachers, buying textbooks, and we don't basically have a clue whether the children were learning more. And then later, when we started actually measuring the learning for children, we realized they weren't learning. And this is something I think, any advice I give to any program is don't start it if you're not going to measure it, if you're not going to set it, because I just think we don't know enough, and we have to learn from what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong.
Okay. What to say about Fred? Although I didn't have the pleasure of working with him full time at all, our paths crossed on and off over the last 4 years or so, first in Timor and more recently in Indonesia. And my strongest memories of him are just of his happy-go-lucky personality and infectious laugh. I remember even in the toughest client-contractor negotiations, where a room of 10 or so people is super tense and stressed out, Fred would be able to crack a joke and break the tension and make a whole room smile. And that quality will be really missed.
The next one is do EMIS. Do measure and have a management information services. But, there's always the but, is, don't do EMIS that's serving international reports or donor reporting. I know I'm talking to a donor agency, and of course you're required to report to your taxpayers on what you're doing and why you're doing something. But if our EMIS systems are mainly serving that, and quite frankly, over the many years I've been working and in many different countries and from many different donor agencies, I find the same fundamental issue and problem, that when EMIS systems are set up, they're set up, at best for the top level of a country to know how they're doing, but they're not used for planning, they're not used for reporting internally, and in the worst case, they're just going to donor agencies who are doing their reports back, or they're going to the global monitoring reports. That is important. I'm not saying it isn't, but the EMIS systems are driving that. So do EMIS, but do it so it has to be set up so it's meaningful for the country to use.
Hi. What I miss most about Fred is his wicked sense of humor. The first time I met him, he just cracked me up and I just couldn't stop laughing. And ever since then, whenever he comes here, it's just a pleasant person. He'll just uplift me even when I'm at the worst moments of my day. So that's Fred for me.
We have to rethink professional development, in-service training, all of the different terms we want to think about. Again, we've talked about these over the last days, and I think we have more and more good experiences and practices, and we know about things, but we still tend to fund good old-fashioned, or I shouldn't say it's good, it's bad old-fashioned in-service training of teachers. We say, and it's generic, it's not thought, what is the actual issue that should be looked at? And I think in this, do think differently now. There's so many different ways around, don't want to use the words like capacity building, but there is different ways around mentoring, there's different good practices, and we have to think really differently about how we're doing it, because again, it goes back to that same question. We're investing a lot in teachers. Most donor programs have a component of teacher education, teacher development, but we're not really doing the right thing.
He's a very humble person, cheerful, and I just can't believe he's gone.
Thank you, Tina.
Fred. He's a very humble person, cheerful. But one of the things I miss about Fred is his quirky sense of humor. He's got this way of being really sarcastic in a nice way, coming up with these really odd quotes from famous people that relates to the work that we're doing and the challenges. It just makes you smile when you talk to him, when you read his emails, and it just brightens everything up. So yeah, that's one of the things I miss about him, and I'll always remember him by. He was a confident, like someone I can talk to easily. He was a specialist in every sense of the word. He was a perfectionist in every sense of the word, even picking up small typo errors and grammatical errors in our briefing notes and just saying something really sarcastic about it. That was Fred. And I'm going to miss him a lot. I'm going to get teary-eyed if I continue. So Fred, wherever you are, bless you, miss you, and we'll always think of you. Fred. There's so many things to say about Fred, but one of the things
to me, it's so central because I have seen so many times in a country where they don't have enough teachers, so they have multiple grades in one class. What do? They put together grades 1 and 2. Worst case scenario, they even reduce the amount of teaching hours for the lower grades, and they think that you have to have the exam grades, they put their best teachers. But the child who's entered into the exam grade is already functionally illiterate because they didn't learn at the foundation. So it's a complete waste. I mean, and it's easier said than done. How do you measure what's a good teacher, the best teacher? It's a different way of thinking, and this is something quite straightforward with almost no cost implications. It's not something a donor alone can do, but I'm just saying when you're supporting programs and looking at things, the best teachers have to be, the child has to learn the basic literacy and numeracy before they're going to develop. You can actually have multi-grade at grades 4, 5, and 6 if they already know how to read and write, and that's where they can do more of the self-learning, etc. Pupils aren't receiving the amount of hours that they should according to the curriculum. We talk about pupil absenteeism, we talk about teacher absenteeism, but it's, as we've talked again in the last couple of days, the schools aren't opening when they should, they're closing earlier than they should, they have special days, they don't teach, and that again is you'd say that's a no-brainer, and you'd think that that's something that, isn't that so obvious? But again, go around any country we're working in, you don't have to even do a survey. Go to 1 or 2 schools, ask them the reality, ask the people in the Ministry of Education, and they'll tell you that the school year doesn't really start when the school year starts. These types of things. I've done the back of the envelope things in 2 or 3 different countries now. You're talking at best 50% of the hours that they're actually receiving. And as I've said many times, well, what are you expecting somebody to learn if you're only giving them half the time they should?
So, just wanted to thank you for sharing your husband with us. He was a lovely man, a great person to work with, an excellent mentor. I wish you and your family all the best, and may God bless you. Thank you. So, just wanted to thank you for sharing your husband with us.
According to the curriculum. We talk about pupil absenteeism, we talk about teacher absenteeism, but it's, as we've talked again in the last couple of days, the schools aren't opening when they should. They're closing earlier than they should. They have special days. They don't teach. And that again is you'd say that's a no-brainer, and you'd think that that's something that isn't that so obvious. But again, go around any country we're working in, you don't have to even do a survey. Go to 1 or 2 schools, ask them the reality, ask the people in the Ministry of Education, and they'll tell you that the school year doesn't really start when the school year starts. These types of things. I've done the back of the envelope things in 2 or 3 different countries now. You're talking at best 50% of the hours that they're actually receiving. You know, and as I've said many times, well, what are you expecting somebody to learn if you're only giving them half the time they should? The last one, that's something I've learned, you know, and quite recently through the work in the last 4 or 5 years. Head teachers, principals, they're teaching too much, meaning they're not doing their core functions. And teachers are teaching too little. You know, there's a strange thing there. We're finding that teachers aren't teaching as much as they should, and head teachers are teaching far too much, meaning they have no hope of doing their activities.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, hi. This is a message for Muffy and Cody. We just want to send you greetings from Samoa and let you know that we're thinking about you. And we're missing Fred too. He left a big gap here. And sending you our love and courage as you deal with this really difficult time. There we go. Yeah. Oh, hi. This is